I used to think a positive pregnancy test would sound like music. Ours sounded like a faucet drip. Not a bad drip, more like that steady, present sound you suddenly notice in a quiet house and then can't unhear. I'm Noah, 35, project scheduler for a commercial construction outfit in Charlotte. Basically, I'm the guy who tells steel, concrete, and people when to show up so money doesn't burn. My wife was Tessa, 32, brand project manager for a mid-tier athleisure company that thinks launch calendars are a personality. I collect timelines for a living. She collects moods. We tried for 14 months. We did everything the internet told us to do, and then the exact opposite when the internet said maybe that was the thing. We temped, we peed on strips, we had a stretch where sex felt like changing a smoke alarm, battery important, time sensitive, not romantic. My spreadsheet had tabs. The one I hated most was called lutes, where I tracked luteal phases like a man trying to project manage an organ. In February, we decided to stop deciding. Let's just be, Tessa said. She deleted 3 period tracking apps and put the thermometer in a drawer with the passports. We bought an expensive candle. We went to Asheville for a long weekend and pretended we were the kind of people who drink ciders with notes of cedar and don't read emails in bathrooms. The test showed up the first week of April, 2 lines so faint I had to squint like a man who didn't trust his own eyes. Tessa came out of the bathroom holding the stick with both hands like it might lunge. I think, she said, and then couldn't say the rest because crying and laughing tripped over each other. We did 3 more tests because we're modern and anxious. The fourth one had a tiny screen that said pregnant, like a machine vouching for a miracle. Tessa sank to the floor with her back against the tub and laughed until it turned into the kind of sob that's mostly air leaving a body after too many months of racing. We hugged on the tile. When we could talk again, she said, I knew this month was different. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe everything. Here's where I tell you about Derek. He's the ex that comes with Tessa's origin story. They dated off and on in Cincinnati after college. He's a runner who loves Fleet Foxes and thinks a six-pack and a philosophy minor are a personality. She still has a scar on her shin from when they tipped the bird scooter into a planter together on Vine Street. The first time she told me about him, she said, "He's over. I'm over it." We were a song that sounds better when you only play the chorus once. I nodded and pretended that sentence didn't feel like a smoke alarm chirping in the back of my head. By the time the test said pregnant, Derek was a character we didn't name anymore. Tessa blocked him after New Year's when he sent a "Hope You're Well" at 1012 a.m. She showed me the block. She made a ceremony of it, swiping like she was pushing a boat away from a dock. We booked the first prenatal appointment. The waiting room had ferns that looked like they didn't believe in fluorescent light either. The nurse took Tessa's blood pressure, took 6 vials from a vein that always hides, and asked for the date of her last period. Tessa said the date and added, "It was weird, short," the nurse typed. I watched the numbers like they were a big calendar. The ultrasound room had that blue hush hospitals love, the one they hope makes you think it's all going to be okay because someone dimmed the lights. The tech was efficient kindness. She asked us to look at the ceiling while she did the wand thing first, then said, "Okay, there's baby," and turned the screen. The little flicker. A heartbeat that didn't make sense and made all the sense. My chest did that thing where something tight unknots so fast you feel dizzy. Tessa grabbed my hand. The tech measured a tiny blob. Crown rump length measures at 6 weeks one day, she said. She typed 6WO Weeder into a field like she was naming a star. 6 weeks, one day. The number sat on the corner of the screen like a subtitle. Back home, I opened my spreadsheet. I didn't want to. I did anyway because I'm me. If you count back from 6W Weridan pregnancy math, which is arcane and dumb and still the math we use, conception likely happened about 4 weeks and one day ago. There's a margin. I know there's a margin. Ultrasound age estimation has a 0.7 day window, especially early. I wrote that on a sticky note, stuck it to my brain. Still, the number pointed at a week where our sex life was a weather report canceled due to work and a cold. We had tried 2 weeks before that, on a Tuesday night after pasta, and once the Sunday before I left for a 3 day concrete pour in Wilmington. The week the math liked, I had to scroll my text to see if we hugged that week at all. "You're doing the face," Tessa said, walking by with tea. She means my "there's a bug in the schedule" face. "It's close," I said. "Just close." I kissed her temple and put my spreadsheet away and told myself to stop turning a baby into a project that needed to pass QA. Tessa went all in on joy. She ordered prenatal vitamins with methylfolate because a friend told her folic acid is for people who didn't read the right threads. She switched coffee to half calf. She started a notes app list called Names That Don't Sound Like a Law Firm. She said miracle in the kitchen while looking at a pear, and I wanted to live in that sentence with her. We told our parents at 8 weeks with coffee mugs that said Grandma and Grandpa like we invented the joke. My mom cried like moms do. Her dad fist bumped me like we were making partner. The second ultrasound was at 9 weeks by the clinic calendar, 8 by the baby's size. 8 weeks, 3 days, the tech said, measuring with the mouse like a person trimming bangs. She looked at our faces. Dating can shift, she added. We go with the ultrasound. Tessa smiled and squeezed my hand, and I memorized the squeeze instead of the math. Tessa's nausea hit like a personality. She threw up once in a Target parking lot and apologized to the cart corral like she'd wronged it. I brought her crackers in bed. I cut strawberries at weird hours. I downloaded an app that tells you your baby is the size of an olive or a kumquat or a thing you've never bought at the store and never will. When it said raspberry, I went and bought raspberries like a man making a private offering. I could have stayed there, raspberries, crackers, pretending the math is jazz, if not for Apple Wallet. We share an Apple family account because we like seeing the same charge twice and calling it accountability. The Wallet app keeps boarding passes unless you delete them. It also keeps them if you forget to manually add them in your email routes through a shared inbox. One Sunday, when Tessa napped with a cracker on her chest, I was clearing promotional emails like an adult, and my thumb hit a trip summary. It opened Wallet. A pass lit up like a magician's reveal. American Airlines, Charlotte to Cincinnati, boarded 3 months ago on a Friday morning. Return Sunday night. I stared. We hadn't flown to Cincinnati together in over a year. I scrolled. The pass had her name, her email, her seat. 10C, the aisle she always chooses, so I can escape if a baby cries and triggers cosmic dread, which is a joke I used to think was charming. The trick dates landed right smack in the week the ultrasound liked best. She told me she was going to Greensboro that weekend to help her mom pack up the attic, a chaotic cube farm of tax returns and dolls with nightmare eyes. She texted me a picture of a dusty prom dress and a caption, "Who wore it best?" I'd responded with a heart and a joke about bangs. I scrolled through Wallet like it could change its mind. The pass had a baggage claim number. A car rental email sat below it, intermediate, AVIS, pickup CBG 12,004 PM, a card I didn't recognize on file. Her Apple card, not our joint Visa. My brain did what my brain does, built a timeline without asking if I wanted one. I didn't confront her, not because I'm noble, because I'm weak in a specific way. I need proof. I need to build a thing I can set on a table and point to and say, this isn't a feeling, this is a receipt. I opened Bank of America and filtered for that weekend. A 72 charge at Rheingeist Brewery, another at 16-bit bar plus arcade, a 17 morning coffee at a place called Deeper Roots that has the kind of menu font that tells you they prefer you order cortados with confidence, not Greensboro, not Mom's Attic. I opened photos and typed Cincinnati. The iPhone can be smarter than is good for anyone. It pulled up a photo of Tessa from 2 summers ago in front of a mural in Over the Rhine. It also pulled up a live photo I didn't remember from that February, a 10-second clip of a street through a car window with a skyline I recognized. She hadn't shared it. It was in a hidden album, which I generally pretend doesn't exist because privacy is a thing I respect until it starts lying to me. I stomped down the part of me that wanted to spin a story from shadows. I looked for light. I opened Facebook because I'm 35 and not ashamed. Memories threw a collage at me. 7 years ago today, Tessa and Derek under a Queen City sign laughing with the kind of intimacy people print on Christmas cards and then regret. I watched the little animation Facebook forces on you and my stomach did that elevator drop again. 7 years ago, to the exact weekend she'd flown back this year. Facebook thought it was sweet. I thought it was coordinates. I didn't sleep that night. I laid there listening to her breathe and told myself all the ways I could be wrong. People fly to see old friends and eat chili on spaghetti and not cheat. People fly for a goodbye. People fly because they think closure needs a plane. People don't fly in the precise window that makes your baby younger than your marriage. The next day, Tessa was a symphony of first trimester. She fell asleep on the couch at dusk with a saltine on her collarbone. She woke up disoriented and apologized to the saltine. It would have been funny if my body hadn't turned into a filing cabinet. I got up, put a blanket on her, and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop like a man sneaking a cigarette, only my smoke was metadata. My chart posted the ultrasound report, CRL measurement 1.79 cm, UB3 EDD adjusted. The docs note said, dating by CRL supersedes LMP, recommend follow-up in 4 weeks. I googled CRL accuracy, like a man trying to make a number change by staring at it. Early dating scans are pretty good. That's the clinical language. Pretty good, not court admissible. My brain wanted court. I built a private sheet, timeline Tessa. I listed dates, last period sex, her reported trip to Greensboro, actual flight to Cincinnati, ultrasound 1, ultrasound 2. I added a column labeled plausible. It felt gross. It also felt like breathing. At lunch, I called my friend Liam because he's the only person who knows how to say, I hear you, and stop at the same time without sounding like a podcast. I gave him the outline, not the bones. He said, do not confront without a plan. Do not corner a pregnant woman. Do not make your baby a hostage to your need to be right. Get facts, then get a lab. A lab, I said, even though I knew. They do non-invasive paternity testing during pregnancy now, he said. Maternal blood draw, paternal cheek swab, fetal DNA floats in the maternal serum. They give you probabilities that might as well be verdicts. It's expensive. It's also cheaper than 6 months of your brain eating itself alive. I hated that he was right in a way that made me grateful. That night, Tessa came home with ginger chews and a new water bottle because Instagram told her hydration is a love language. She sat on the rug and looked up at me with a face that had made too many bartenders put extra limes in her seltzer and said, can we talk about names? She opened her notes app list and read June, Rowan, Ada, Miles. I nodded and wrote Miles on my paper timeline next to Ava Cincinnati because sometimes you have to hold two things and pretend your hands aren't shaking. She said, you're quiet. I'm tired, I said, which wasn't a lie. Work. She put her head on my knee. Do you ever think this baby came now because we stopped trying? I thought about planes and CRL measurements and a Facebook memory with a boy named Derek whose teeth I want to forget. I think babies come when they come, I said, and the rest of us spend the rest of our lives making meaning. Tessa's best friend Mara came over Saturday with a bag of lemon loaf and an energy that could power a blender. They talked baby showers and I did dishes like a ghost. At one point, Mara's Apple Watch lit up on the counter with a notification, and Tessa laughed too loud and then said, "Oh my God, no!" in that fake shocked way women do when they try to close a door that opened on the wrong hallway. I pretended not to notice. I noticed. Sunday morning, Tessa's phone buzzed at 7,002 a.m. She slept through everything but sun. A message flashed on her lock screen before it went to dark. An unsaved number with a 513 area code. You okay? Three dots. Then, thinking about you. I didn't touch her phone. I stared at the ceiling and learned exactly how many slats we have on the vent. I didn't become a monster. I made an appointment. The lab was in a bland office park near the airport with a lobby that smelled like paper and sanitizer. You're not the first person to do this, the receptionist said softly, which was meant to be mercy and landed like a historical fact. They took my ID, my cheek swab, my credit card. We'll need your partner's blood draw at 7 weeks or later, she said. We're already there. She handed me a packet I didn't read. It felt like instructions for assembling a chair you hope you never have to sit on. Convincing Tessa to do the blood draw required a lie, the kind I will regret even if it ends up saving both our lives. I told her it was a newer, more accurate gender NIPT screen my insurance covered if we put it through this lab. She perked up at gender, then feigned responsibility and said, we shouldn't know. 10 minutes later, she scheduled it anyway because curiosity is a glow stick you can't help snapping. At 12 weeks, we had the dating ultrasound that turned into the nuchal translucency ultrasound because fetal medicine has a thesaurus. CRL said 9 weeks, 5 days, still behind. Consistency is good, the tech chirped. Baby catches up to the due date on their own timetable. I smiled. Tessa cried because the sound of the heartbeat this time made everything in the room irrelevant for 30 seconds. In the car, she said, I'm so relieved. I said, me too. My phone buzzed with an email, confirmation, genetic paternity analysis, sample received. I turned the screen over. 3 days later, Apple Wallet served me another artifact. Your trip is ready. A flight next month, Charlotte to Cincinnati, booked with miles. I hadn't booked it. The confirmation email was to her. She'd forgotten to toggle off family sharing for travel updates. I stared at the date. It landed on the weekend our friends wanted to throw a reveal party where a cake would tell us whether we had to learn to braid hair. I asked her casually at dinner, your mom feeling better? Think you'll go up again this month because I am a coward and a scientist and I wanted to see which story she'd open. She twirled pasta and said, maybe. Mara wants me to go to the beach house instead, and my fork felt heavy in my hand. I started leaving the house early, not to flee, but to survive. I ran a loop around Freedom Park because I needed a place where my feet did the same thing every time and didn't lie. I started talking to Daisy, our neighbor's dog, over the fence like she was a therapist with a nose. I started making a second spreadsheet called What I Know Without Hurting Anyone because lists are my anesthesia. The paternity lab called on a Thursday while I was in a job site trailer running a meeting about pore sequences. Unknown number. I ignored it and felt the air go thin. I wrapped up early, walked outside into the kind of heat that makes you swear we built a city in a toaster, and listened to the voicemail in the shade of a hauler. We've received both samples and the analysis is complete. Please log into your secure portal for results. For support interpreting, you may call our counselor. I didn't log in a parking lot. I drove home through traffic thick as soup, hands on 10 and 2, like I was learning to drive again. Tessa called from the couch. I'm watching a birth video. It's beautiful and horrifying. I said something like, I love you, and went to the bedroom, closed the door, sat on the edge of the bed, opened my laptop, and clicked the link. The portal asked for two-factor. I appreciated the commitment to security even as I wanted to throw the computer through the window. The PDF opened. Probability of paternity, greater than 99.9%, or excluded, were the two outcomes I rehearsed in my head like lines in a bad play. The number on the page was an answer. My mouth went dry anyway. I read it twice, then a third time, the way you look at a crane lifting steel and pretend you're not afraid it might drop. I closed the laptop carefully, like the truth might spill. I sat there for a long time, listening to the house breathe, to Tessa in the other room reacting to a video she would have sent to me a year ago with a joke about the word plug. In another life, I would have walked out and turned the room into a courtroom and won. In this one, I picked up my phone, opened Facebook, and clicked Memories because I wanted to see what the algorithm thought mattered today. It was a photo of Tessa and me 3 years ago in front of a sunflower field outside Raleigh, both of us squinting, both of us sweaty and happy, captioned, Future. I stared until my vision doubled. I walked out to the living room. Tessa muted the birth video and smiled at me with a mouth that had no idea. She patted the couch. Come watch. This part is wild. I sat. I watched a stranger do a thing that changes everything. I kept my hands folded because if I reached for her in that moment, I knew I'd be doing it to hold on to a version of us that no longer existed, and I don't lie with my hands. The next morning, I told her we needed to stop by the lab to sign something the insurance asked for. She rolled her eyes about bureaucracy and put on sandals. In the car, she played a playlist called Soft Spring and sang along even though she doesn't know lyrics, humming the parts where words should be. I gripped the wheel to keep from shaking. We pulled into the bland office park. The receptionist greeted us with the voice of someone who knows an appointment's true purpose, even if the people in front of her don't. She handed Tessa a clipboard. Just a quick release, she said. Tessa signed. We went back to the car. My heart hammered like a nail gun. Can we get pancakes? She said, and I thought about how I used to believe that a shared breakfast could fix most of a marriage's bruises. I thought about Apple Wallet. I thought about Facebook's cheerful collage. I thought about the number on the PDF and what it meant for a baby whose heartbeat had already taught me a sound I didn't know my body could make. Yeah, I said, because doing a kind thing when your bones are on fire is a habit worth keeping. Let's get pancakes. While she read syrup options like they were plot twists, my phone buzzed. A 513 number again, this time just 3 words. We need to talk. We need to talk. I turned the screen over. I cut her pancakes for her because first trimester makes knives feel like betrayal. I poured her syrup the way she likes it, slow, in a spiral. She smiled at me like we still occupied the same page. I smiled back like a man who had learned to hold two truths in his mouth without biting either. I wanted this baby. I wanted the truth. And only one of those wants was going to let me keep breathing like a person who deserved to be a father. The pancakes came with 4 kinds of syrup in a decision I didn't know I'd already made. I poured in a slow spiral the way she likes, and that tiny act of muscle memory felt like a bridge no one had declared closed yet. On the drive home, she put her feet up on the dash and hummed to a song she doesn't know the words to. At a red light, my phone lit with the 513 again. We need to talk. I texted back one sentence. I agree. Later today. My number ends in a 128. Do not call her. He sent an address to a park and noted like we were about to split a six-pack and pretend nothing mattered. I wrote back, 5 p.m., public place, 15 minutes, then I leave. Tessa napped when we got home, a blanket over her shoulders, the TV asking if we were still watching. I sat at the table and opened the lab portal again like the number might behave differently if I gave it a second chance to be kind. It didn't. I printed the result because paper makes my brain stop arguing with feelings. I slid it into a blue folder because I am nothing if not consistent about how I carry disasters. At 45, I parked by the park's loop and watched a guy in a Reds hat walk up and sit on a bench with his hands on his knees like prayer. He stood when he saw me, and I noticed the things you notice when you want to hate a man: the easy posture, the forearms, the eyes that look like they'd had a simple life until recently. Owen? He asked, then corrected himself. Noah? Yeah, I said. Columbus, I said, because my mouth still wanted to pick a fight with geography. Cincinnati, he said. Sorry. We stood there long enough for it to get stupid. Then I sat and he sat, and for a second we looked like friends who realized they did not like the same person for different reasons. I didn't know about you the first time, he said. I knew about you the second. Which time was which? I asked, because if we're going to do nouns, we're going to do all of them. Last fall, she called me to say she was done for real, he said. January, she texted on my birthday. I didn't answer. February, she said she was in town to say goodbye to a friend, and I let it be a coincidence. I told myself it was closure. That's a word people use when they want approval to be cruel. We met. It happened. I thought it was the last time. Then she called 2 weeks later and said her period was weird, and I did math out loud in my head, and it sounded like coins in a jar. She told me Greensboro, I said. She told me miracle. He swallowed. It is a miracle, he said, and my entire body wanted to stand up and leave. He rushed. Hands up. I mean, life, not the story. I slid the folder across the bench. I'm not the father, I said. We did a non-invasive. It's accurate enough to build your future on. He didn't reach for the paper. He stared at the corner like it could answer for both of us. Then he took it with 2 fingers like it might bite and read silently. When he got to the number, his breathing changed. Okay, he said, and the syllables were not triumphant. Okay. I'm not here to make a show, I said. I'm here to avoid one. She's 12 weeks. I will not be in a delivery room for a lie. I also will not leave a baby without a plan. You and I are going to act like the 2 grown men in this triangle. What do you want from me? He asked, and it was the first honest question of the day. Reality, I said. Tell your family, start a file. When the baby's born, you get the hospital test and sign the paper. You set up support with the court so none of us has to have opinions about math. You show up like a father, not a cameo. And you don't text my wife ever again. If she wants to coordinate parenting with you later, she can do it through an app or a lawyer, not a thinking about you bubble at 7,002 a.m. He nodded, jaw tight. Yes, he said, I can do that. I will do that. We stood, because the bench had given us the maximum time it was ever going to. He offered a hand, and I took it for exactly one shake because this isn't a movie, and people don't become brothers because a woman set 2 calendars. Don't make me chase you through court, I said. I won't, he said, and the way his mouth set told me he'd already made a phone call to a man who keeps forms in a drawer. At home, the house had that end-of-day quiet where the light is honest. Tessa was at the counter slicing a lemon like someone on a cooking show having a gentle thought. She looked up and smiled like all my parts belonged to her. Can we do the cute Thursday tortellini, she asked. I've been dreaming about that stupid sauce. We can, I said. We can also talk first. She put the knife down slowly, a stage direction. In the car, I said, because we have neighbors and I want it to be contained by walls I don't love. She grabbed the cardigan without looking at me. We sat in the driveway with the windows cracked and the engine off like two teenagers about to make a bad decision and trying to delay making it. I got the lab result, I said. It excludes me. She didn't cry. Her mouth did a small thing like it was deciding whether to take off a costume. I don't believe that, she said. Early tests can be wrong. The internet says so. The internet says 1,000 things, I said. The internet isn't our child's father. The test is clean. If you want, we can call the counselor from the lab and hear the same sentence from a person who does this every day. I want to do over at a different lab, she said, because the body goes bargaining before it goes anywhere else. We can do 5 labs, I said. They will all land on the math you wrote when you got on a plane to Cincinnati the week we made a person by accident in your head. Her eyes flashed. Don't you dare, she said. Don't you dare call my baby an accident. I didn't, I said, and meant it. I called your story an accident. Babies don't ask for the circumstances. People do. She stared at the windshield and said nothing for a long time. Then, I thought I couldn't, she said. I thought maybe I was broken. I thought if the universe wanted to give me one more time to say goodbye, it meant there was nothing left to lose. You had everything left to lose, I said. You had me. She finally looked at me. Do I still? She asked, and there was no manipulation in the question. It was a person looking at a cliff. You have me as a kind man who will not set your life on fire, I said. You do not have me as a husband. That word needs math to match. She pressed her lips together and nodded once like someone listening to an awful song until it ends. Derek texted you this morning, I said. Please, stop, for both your sakes. I know, she said. He wants to be involved. He will be, I said. We're going to make it legal. You already went to a lawyer, she said, a half smile that didn't reach her eyes. You're the kind of man who knows the filing cabinet at the end of the world. I went to a lab, I said. I am going to a lawyer tomorrow because I would like to sleep again this month. She cried then the way people do when they run out of alternate scripts. I let her. I didn't reach across the gear shift because touch is an endorsement I couldn't offer without lying. We cooked tortellini anyway. We ate on the couch like people in a rental. That night I slept in the guest room because a bed is a promise and my body now thinks in contracts. The next morning I called a family attorney named Harper whose Google reviews read like Valentines from people who thought they would never like a lawyer. She listened without making me add adjectives and said, we're going to do 2 tracks. 1, a separation agreement for you two. 2, a pre-birth parentage plan so the hospital doesn't hand you a pen and ask you to write lies. How do we do that, I asked, because fluorescent lights make men like me practical. In North Carolina, she said, you can't finalize parentage until birth, but you can file a notice with the hospital and the state that paternity is contested, along with the lab report. They'll flag the birth certificate. After delivery, the 3 of you can do a court-ordered test in 48 hours and sign an acknowledgement of paternity. We'll also draft a consent order for child support so you don't have to fight later. I'll need all your receipts, flights, texts, Facebook memories if they bear on dates. I have receipts, I said, and she chuckled like she'd been waiting for that sentence. I told Tessa after dinner because I'm done making announcements and want to tell the truth only once a day. She took it quietly and then asked if I'd still go to the 12-week appointment. I want the baby to have a father frame in the room, she said. The sentence made me flinch and soften at the same time. I'll go, I said. I won't be in the family photo. We told our parents with 2 phone calls that felt like taking a splinter out that has been in so long it thinks it's wood. My mom said the sentence that will be on my headstone, do the boring thing, baby. Her dad didn't say much, but he came over the next morning and fixed the cabinet door that's been crooked since we moved in. Fathers tell the truth even when they don't have words. Mara, the best friend with the blender energy, sent a long text that started with, no one is perfect, and ended with, men can still be fathers even if biology says otherwise. I stared at it until the iMessage screen timed out. 2 hours later, Harper emailed me a screenshot in Lena's initial separation petition. An affidavit from a friend witness named Mara used phrases like controlling tendencies, Noah's obsession with schedules, and my concern for Tessa's safety. Attached were 2 journaling prompts that read like they came out of a couples therapist Google Doc. The metadata said the doc owner was an old Gmail with a handle I recognized from Tessa's college nicknames. Harper filed her motion the same afternoon to exclude unreliable narratives from friends acting as advocates and suggested I not respond to Mara at all. Ghosts know when they're seen, she said. They hate light. 2 days later, Mara blocked me. She blocked my mom. She put up a story that read, protect your peace, in a font that makes people confess to crimes. If you're waiting for karma, sometimes it's just who stops showing up when the lights come on. Weeks moved. Tessa's belly made it impossible to pretend. We went to the anatomy scan together because the baby didn't ask for our paperwork. I cried at the spine like a man who has never understood engineering and suddenly does. Tessa squeezed my fingers so hard I thought I'd have to ask for ice. We didn't speak in the hallway because words were either too much or not enough. Harper filed the hospital notice. Derek hired counsel and sent me a scanned letter with his signature on a voluntary acknowledgement form to be filed after birth contingent on the test. His lawyer wrote like a tired poet. We scheduled a three-way Zoom with the hospital social worker and wrote down who would stand where and who would hold what piece of paper and how to keep me out of a signature line I didn't belong on. It felt like planning a tiny, depressing parade. It was the right thing. On a Tuesday in October, Tessa's water broke at 3 a.m. in a way that made her laugh and panic and apologize to the rug. I drove her to the hospital because I promised to be kind and because I'm more practical than righteous. In triage, I told the nurse, calmly and without editorial, that paternity was contested and a notice was on file. The nurse nodded without judgment because labor wards are the Switzerland of human behavior. She put a blue band on Tessa's wrist and a white one on mine that meant support, not father. Derek waited in the family lounge like a man at parole. I walked out to him at dawn and we did the quiet man hug where you slap twice because the body needs punctuation. You go back, I said. I'll sit out here and hold up my end of not being the story. The doctor came out mid-morning and said, "She's good. Baby's good." I sat down because my knees had been lying to me all day. A nurse asked if I wanted to meet the baby. I said yes because love is a choice you can make without stealing a title. I washed my hands like it was a sacrament and stood in a doorway and looked at a human who did not ask for a triangle. "Hi," I said. My voice did a thing I won't describe because it belongs to him. 2 days later, we all went to the lab in the hospital basement that smells like every decision anyone ever made. Cheek swab, heel stick, forms, signatures. 48 hours after that, the state acknowledged what the first lab already had. Derek's name went on the certificate. Mine didn't. It was correct. It still felt like the paper had hands. Child support took longer because the court likes to teach patience, but the order came through before Christmas. Monthly support on a schedule that makes sense. Half of uncovered medical, a parenting plan that didn't require me to become a referee. We added a clause that all communication would go through a co-parenting app with read receipts and a negotiation tool because we had learned that nothing good happens in the 7002 AM ether. Tess and I signed the separation agreement in a room with a plant you water once a month. No alimony. We split the savings evenly because decency survives even after someone sets it on fire. She kept the mid-century dresser she loved. I kept the bed and the coffee table I built in the blue folder, which I scanned and then fed into a shredder because paper is a boat and I'd finally reached the other shore. Mara did not show up in any courtroom. On the day of the hearing, she posted a story from a Yoda retreat with a caption about releasing what no longer serves. I did not screenshot it. I did text Harper a thank you for anticipating a storm that fizzled before it got to my yard. Tessa and I talk about the baby the way people talk about weather. They both wish would be gentle. I bring diapers to her porch sometimes because kindness should stay boring. She sent me a picture of him asleep with his hand open like he just let go of something heavy. "He looks like you when you finish a long day," she wrote. "I will not lie," I cried, not because I thought he was mine, because I am the kind of man who cries when anyone rests. When people asked, I tell the short version. She flew where the memories are. The ultrasound told the truth. The lab said the quiet part without malice. We ended it before the baby had to grow up in a house where math and love argued every morning. If this finds you staring at a date that won't behave, this is your permission to ask the unromantic questions. Babies deserve parents who don't lie to each other about the calendar. You can love a child and still refuse to sign your name on a fiction. You can be kind without being a doormat. You can sit in a waiting room and choose the boring room where case numbers are assigned over the dramatic room where somebody ends up filming you for likes. What would you have done? Called her before the lab, or after, shown up at the hospital, or disappeared? Stayed for the baby even if the paper said no, or left because the math made staying an act of self-erasure? Tell me in the comments. Be honest. If this story held you, hit like so. It finds the people staring at Apple Wallet and trying to decide if they're cruel for wanting facts. Subscribe if you want more long, messy, truthful stories where the twist isn't a shock. It's a boarding pass, a heartbeat, a PDF, and a man who learned that love without honesty is just wishful thinking with good lighting.